What's up, everybody? Sorry about the late start. Hopefully Comcast plays well today. It was going up and down all night, and we had a couple outages today, so we'll see. I guess this is just life now. You would think after paying them $130-something a month for internet service, they can make an internet service that actually works. That'd be great. So, all right, we are here with our weekly Ask Tim stream. Hopefully this stream goes well. Last stream was kind of crappy because of the constant issues with Comcast. The bot is connecting right now. I don't know why it didn't auto-connect, but all right, there we go. So if you guys go ahead and put your questions in the chat, the bot will pick it up. It should work. Someone told you guys it's my birthday soon. Not yet. Not yet. In 4 days, I will be 34. So, I'm trying to think of what stuff we have in terms of updates. The firmware testing is going really well. Basically, all the existing features that are in the current release of the firmware, so all of our, auto bed leveling, all the additional features, the printer setup, everything's working. Input shaping is working as well, but I did notice, like I said on the last stream, the Ender 7 is having some weird issues. Now, I have put the Ender 7 down on the floor for now. I'm pausing doing things with that one until I can figure out if I can reprogram those drivers. But I was going through my bin of parts, and I found these, and I've had these for years. But I was thinking that if for some reason the Creality drivers are not able to work correctly with input shaping, I could put together a solution with these little guys, since we have the direction and step pins and the enable pins all broken out because they're using those external drivers. So if you look on the side here, you see this EDS that's enabled direction and step. And what this board does is it allows you to take a step stick, like a standard step stick driver, put it on here, plug the motor in here, and then you give it the 9 volt. It says 9 volts, but I'd probably run a little bit higher than that. 9 volt ground and 5 volt, and I'm not sure why they have 9 volts on there, but that is the pin that goes to powering the actual stepper driver that would be inserted into here. And this cap is a 50 volt cap, so I can put 24 volts in on there, ground, and then 5 volts. I'm not sure what it's using the 5 volt for. I'm actually looking at this. I think it's probably a logic setting for the driver. Yeah, it is. So it's going to one of the pins for the driver. So, but we have the 5 volt output on the board. So basically, if for some reason we cannot do configuration with the trinamic driver boards that Creality puts in the Ender 7, I could feasibly make a drop-in kit around these boards with a new adapter plate, this board, and some wiring to replace the drivers that come with the printer. So we could literally pop on like a 2209 right onto here and use it as a standard driver. So, but that's my plan. I was going through my bin. I was like, these would probably help to work around the issue with those drivers with input shaping on the Ender 7. So, I mean, hell, even just putting a basic 4988 driver into there would be good. So, other than that, we're trying to shoot for end of the month for the new firmware release, maybe sooner. I want to get it on more printers. That's going to be I'm going to be doing this weekend. So the rest of my fleet is going to be upgraded to the new 2.60 beta of the Unified Firmware 2, and I'm also going to try to coincide the release of the firmware for the Soval SV06 with the new 2.6 release. There might be also other printers that we put into there because I'm going to rapid fire next week doing 2 printer streams. We're going to be doing the S8 Pro from Sunlu, which I've had here for a couple months, and the Soval SV01 Pro as well. And the SV01 Pro will be getting an LCD conversion because it's got those dreaded touchscreens on there. So anyways, yeah. that's what I have in the pipeline. We're going over more internal meeting stuff with the Mercury 1 kits. I will be building a Mercury 1 kit myself on top of one of our Ender 5s here in about 2 weeks. So once we finish that up, we're going to be looking into actually carrying those once I've qualified everything. So Tor and Peter have been working on those for a number of months now, getting everything ironed out, making sure we have the right STL files, the right BOMs, meaning if we sell a kit, you're going to have the correct hardware, because the main problem right now is if you buy some of these kits from other resellers, the kits might have the wrong parts with the STL files that are currently out. So we're locking in on our own selection of STL files that will match the hardware we're selling, so you don't have to go through all the headache of trying to figure out why you don't have the parts you need to build the kit that you thought you were going to be able to build, if that makes sense. So other things in printing, which is why I bought printers, was to do projects. And after I crashed my last drone build when Sam Prentice was here back in June, it was from Murph, I rebuilt this. I reused my old flight stack. So the ESC and the flight controller and the receiver are all from my last build, because I had an F7 stack in here, so might as well. But you can see here, I just want to show off, this is the first time that I've printed TPU on my Ender 3 S1, and I used a PLA profile for the TPU, and I wanted blue, so I think this is from Inland, which I got it from Micro Center, so it's probably Inland. But I wanted a blue. Blue is my favorite color, if you guys couldn't tell by the company branding, the paint in my walls. So yeah, I had to print everything in blue, and that came out really nice. But the print quality off of the S1 with that sprite extruder setup is actually really nice. It did the TPU no problem. So yeah, how many of you guys here, I'm just curious, how many of you guys have a 3D, well, obviously you probably have a 3D printer if you're watching, but how many of you guys also use your printers for printing drone stuff? Because that was one of the things I wanted to get into 3D printing, was to print print drone parts and print electronics enclosures. This was the stock color. This is an iFlight Titan XL5 frame. This was the stock color, which wasn't terrible, but I don't like green. It's not terrible, but I like blue. And I'm actually going to ask you guys a question before we get started. So I fly 4S. I used to fly 3S, so I have some 3S packs here. And these are just an Amazon special I bought like 2 years ago, which they're not bad. But I have bigger motors on here. And I'm wondering what you guys who fly drones or do RC stuff, what would you guys recommend to me for a higher capacity, because I do like flying longer. What would you guys recommend for a battery pack to try out? So, because these are about 30 to 35 bucks a pack, and they're not bad. They're just, they're just some Chinese packs. Sean out in the shop, he's our print farm manager. He said he likes to tattoo our lines. I'm just curious to see what you guys recommend in terms of batteries. So. Typically I order from like Race Day Quads or Pyro Drone for my drone parts. Tattoo and GNB. Okay, I saw GNB. Tattoo I see come up a lot for batteries. All right. So let's get into the questions. I do have one more announcement, but I want to get to the questions here. You guys need to ask me questions. To ask questions, you have to put !Q space the question. So if you put !Q and then immediately start typing your response with no space between the Q and the first word in the sentence, the bot will not pick it up. So, yes. So ask the questions. You'll know if your question was picked up by the bot because it will reply. It will reply to the question. So, all right. The other thing I have is we have another contest coming up, and here we go. I had the link up here. So we have our Functional Hearts contest, which is going to be running through Saturday, February 11th. So we're going to go ahead and post links out to that. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Boom, there it is. And I'm going to go ahead and make also a thing on the front page of our site with a link. We're going to start updating our site more. This year, I want to focus, since we moved our help center off to its own website, I want to focus on getting the new main website redesigned. So if you guys have any suggestions to ways we could make our main website, like the store side of things, easier or different or anything, let us know. You know, I am actually the one who does all the web development here. I'm not a web development expert, but I'm very well versed in WordPress and WooCommerce, which is what we use. So if you guys have any recommendations on what we could do to make things easier to find, easier to navigate, or just better layouts, I am open for suggestions. You know, if you got other sites you want to send me as examples, let me know, because that's the whole point of us moving everything around and changing it. I want to make the site easier to navigate, because I understand while it's not terrible, it's also not great. So, all right, let's see. I'm just saying tattoo for the bigger batteries, G&B for the high volt 3S toothpicks. Yeah, I'm going to stick with 4S. Once these 3S packs are dead, I'm not buying any more 3Ss. So, all right, Franklin says he's got a Hubsan 501SS, but I've not printed any parts for it. I feel like it's funny because I ordered this drone frame and I was shocked to get printed parts in a drone. It's wild to me. Like, but I guess it's not that uncommon. Ron Bray says he used tattoo batteries as well. So it sounds like I should order some tattoos. Yeah. When will you pick up the hotbed for the Tina 2? It's right here. I have it. I just have not done the Tina 2. That is unfortunately lower on the stream list because we've already done that printer, but I'm going to build it for my mom. So this little heated bed that you sent me, Peter, which I appreciate, will be going on a printer that will be going to my mother so she can learn 3D printing. I felt like that's a pretty good little printer for her to start with because it's got auto bed leveling. It's tiny. It doesn't take up a ton of space. So, yeah, I think it's adorable. I'm going to have to see how many watts, but I think I might be able to get away with powering this off power brick. I'm going to measure the resistance on it and see. Because if I can get it to run at about 60 degrees Celsius, that's really all we need to hit. So, let's see. Randy Hightower said, Flight Test generally carries pretty reliable RC tech. Okay, I'll have to check them out. All right, so you guys need to answer questions. Again, we are running a contest through February 11th. If you want to do that, that's our functional hearts contest. So they need to be prints of hearts that do stuff. So like one example that comes to mind in one I printed years ago where it had all these interlocking gears, you turned it and it like changed shape and then you kept turning it, and then it turned into a heart. Stuff like that. So I know there's a ton of stuff out there. So let's see those prints. All right. Let's see. Let's see the first question. I guess this is not a question, but a customer testimonial, which I'll read from Vic, as he said, you know how awesome Tor is, especially with ignorant customers that don't fully read directions. That's a lot of them, sadly, but he has been a huge help in my copycat Ender 5 Plus build. Okay. I'm assuming you're copying my build, or are you doing what he did with his regular 5? Let's see. All right. Dominic Versetto says, any thoughts about the Ender 5 S1 compatible with EasyBoard and other stuff? So I have not seen, other than pictures, anything to do with the Ender 5 S1, but Matt Farmer from Akuma Mods actually has one, and I got to link up with him because he was going to be getting rid of his, and I was like, well, I'll take it. Either, I can, just borrow it and do some upgrades and give them back to upgrade, or we'll buy it off you, because it does look interesting. It just looks more like what Crayole's been doing, which is just incremental changes, mostly changes to just making things look nicer, and really it's basically the same printer. So yeah, I will be getting my hands on that printer. We bought the SV06 from Soval, which if you guys come back on Friday at 2 p.m. Central Time, we'll be doing that live stream. And then we'll be doing firmware for that. Maybe not on the live stream, but there will be firmware coming out for it. Randy Hightower said, have there been any cool features baked into new stepper drivers? I haven't heard much in the way of stepper news since the MK3 launched. I don't know what you mean by stepper drivers. Oh, like the stepper drivers, like the Trinamics. As far as I know, I haven't heard anything myself either. And I see Vigas is saying, yes, he's copying my Ender 5 Plus build behind me with a Mosquito Hot End, which has been a very reliable setup. And that's actually got one of our very early version 1 easy boards in it. But the Hot End setup's been great. I actually got to get a print going for a customer. He reached out to us and wanted one of the Motorola cable modem rack mounts printed in ABS, so I'm going to be doing it on that printer. All right. Happy birthday early. Make sure Comet doesn't steal half your cake. Oh, Comet's not out here because we were bad last night. I was out here soldering up the drone, and normally they're fine. They just play and stuff. And he decided to go in my drone cart, which is like a tool cart that I have, and was rifling through the stuff, which is, I thought he was just, sniffing around in there like he usually does. And he ate my, like, not swallowed it, but he took and chewed up and completely destroyed the brushed cockroach frame tiny whoop I made, which it sucks. I'm not really that upset about it because I hated that drone. Like, once you go from brush to brushless, you can't go back. But yeah, he was a bad dog. So let's see. So JDCCC26 says, if a BL Touch errors out using unified firmware with EasyBoard 2, what should happen during a print? Mine continued to extrude filament until I turned off the printer. So from the question, I'm assuming you meant something happened with your BL Touch. Maybe the pin deployed or got caught up in the print, and then it just kept printing. I would have to see that failure, what actually happened, or if you can provide more details, I can circle back to that question. So I'm going to leave that at the top of the question queue here. So, but yeah. That's interesting. So if you're, in general, if your auto bed leveling probe fails to probe when you're starting a print, it should just say probing failed and stop. But then, what's it called? It should just probe and stop. But if it happens during a print, whether it's a BL Touch or Easy ABL, the printer's not really going to be aware of it. Your printer's kind of dumb. If something happens physically, like the probe fails or something falls onto the print bed and gets caught up, it's just going to keep going. So that's one of the reasons why you should have a set of eyes on your printers, whether that's, an IP camera pointed at it or a webcam. If you run an Octoprint, you should definitely keep an eye on it, because it's not going to realize that something's wrong. It's just going to keep sending commands to the motors. EasyBoard for the Ender 6 on my to-do list, but I do not have an ETA because I got a bunch of other printers to get through. Losing says, does the site compile the new firmware, or do we have to build it ourselves? So the beta firmware you have to build yourself. It will build the new firmware, but not until it's officially released. We can only have one firmware version loaded onto the Easy Firmware site. So if you want to try out the beta, you're going to have to load up Visual Studio Code and compile it yourself. I know it's painful if you're used to using their Easy Firmware, but it's not terrible. Julio Reyes said, can you explain the benefit of the new firmware you're testing? What does the main feature do that is compared to Clipper? So there's a thing called input shaping, and input shaping is basically you print a test print, you find you measure your Z height, which I've made a calculator for on our website, to find out where the best print quality is. That'll give you the frequency then once you plug into the calculator, and allow you to print faster with less artifacting. That's the goal. And that's the thing that the Clipper fanboys like to rant and rave about. Well, now we're doing it on the control board. So this is a test print file that you print. This was printed on my Ender 7 at 200 millimeters a second. I measure and see where on the test print in terms of going up on Z height looks the best. I measure that, plug in the value into the calculator, and it tells me what frequency it should be at for compensation. So, yeah, and this is doing it all on the printer's board, and this is doing it on stock Creality boards. This isn't even doing it on our crazy overpowered Easy board. This is doing it on the 32-bit board. So, for those of you that don't want to spend 10 hours setting up Clipper and constantly fixing things as they make updates that break things, it's going to be a great solution. So, all right. But yeah, the thing is, like, we have done some testing on the EasyBoard V1 and the V2. I have not seen any slowdowns like I've seen on the stock Creality boards. And what I mean by slowdowns is when you're running all this stuff, the LCD can take time to update, because basically what Marlin does is, as it's printing, it will sacrifice LCD updates to ensure smooth printing. So basically, if you're running Marlin on your printer board and you're trying to use the LCD and you're printing, especially from SD, it's not uncommon if you're on a lower end board like the Creality boards, or even especially the 8-bit boards, for the LCD to kind of lag and take a couple seconds to update, because the printer is prioritizing the printing versus the LCD. So the alternative to that would be it would stutter the print in order to update the LCD quickly. I would personally rather just have it do what it's doing, which is throttle the LCD to ensure that the print quality is maintained. When you have faster, higher quality boards like our Easy boards, you don't have to worry about that, because the CPUs are a lot faster. There's a lot more memory, so they can do more stuff at the same time. All right. Vickers is asking, do I have any update on the extrusion trim we ordered? It is ordered and on the way. I do not have an ETA just yet, but we did order. I ordered 500 feet of it. So what's that, like 200 something meters? And I believe they did tell me that there was a limit on the length. I think it's 2 meters per length. I'm pulling up my conversation. Hang on one second. Max length is 2 meters. So we're going to sell them in 2 meter lengths. Or maybe 1 meter. So it wouldn't be a big deal for us to cut them down. So, but the max continuous length we'll be able to get is 2 meters. So yeah, we ordered hundreds of them. So, all right. I see someone struggling to ask a question here. There we go. You got it. Good job. All right. So, the next one is from Ron. He said it will input shaping work on the 8-bit board. So it will compile. I have not tested on an 8-bit board, and I actually realized that I don't have a single 8-bit printer in my office, but the Tina 2 has an 8-bit board, so I am going to test it on there. I would say, given the fact that the 8-bit boards are so slow and outdated, I would not expect it to run well at all on them. The fact that the Creality boards are even, struggling a little bit to do everything all at once tells me that the 8-bits are probably not going to really stand a chance. So, yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath. I would just assume that basically if you have an 8-bit board, you're going to be able to run more basic stuff like auto bed leveling, linear advance, but once you start getting the input shaping, it's time to upgrade your printer. But I see, I don't even know, Leister from above says, he's asking about the Aquila X2 with the H32 firmware. Basically, if you have an H32 CPU, even though they did release the source code, good luck compiling it. You're going to just replace your board. I'll just be honest with you. It is not worth, like, if I was trying to upgrade that printer, I would just replace the control board, because while they do have source code, it uses a very antiquated IDE, the old Eclipse IDE. I have not been able to get it to compile even with the Eclipse IDE installed. So you're gonna be better off just replacing the control board with something else that would fit in there, and going with a board that you can actually natively use within Marlin with Visual Studio Code and Platform IO. So, and speaking of source code on those H32 boards, Creality also released the Ender 2 Pro source code, which I got to update the violation list. So our violation list is getting people to comply again, which is good, because I've heard also that Tronxy released source code as well. So I do have to do some updates. I think the last time I updated the page was 11/21. So but the reality is, if you have those H32 processors, the source code is available, but you're probably not going to be able to figure out how to compile it. I have not had a successful compile with it. Doesn't mean it's not impossible. It just means if I'm not able to figure it out, many other people probably aren't going to be able to. But they did release the source code, so I guess that is technically that is technically fulfilling their obligations to the GPL, even if it's, janky. So JD CCC 20. Oh, so this is the guy with the BL Touch. I'm going to reread his question. So he asked earlier, if a BL Touch error is out, he's using the unified firmware with our EasyWord 2. What should happen during a print? Mine continued to extrude filament nonstop until I turned out the printer. So it kept printing. I was running an M420 to restore the mesh. I just replaced the mount for the BL Touch. Print was about to start. It flashed red and just started dumping filament at the start point above the bed. I haven't seen that failure mode, but I would, if you are changing your hot end mount or your bed, like you reinstalled your bed, or maybe you changed how it was leveled, do not use an old mesh, get a new mesh. We always recommend in general that if you are using an all bed leveling sensor, even if it's not ours, to just get a new mesh every time. Now, if you're more comfortable and you have more experience using the stored mesh settings, then go ahead, but we don't even use it here. We take a fresh mesh every time we start a print, because I look at it this way. I don't care about saving time. Like an Easy ABL will probe your bed in anywhere, depending on the speed settings you have and the bed size, it'll probe it anywhere from 15 seconds to 20 seconds, maybe 30 even on a larger, slower printer. Now, if you have a BL Touch, I understand it's slow. Like the BL Touch is slow, but still, I would rather have a fresh mesh every single time I start the print. And if you guys are looking for starting code that works with an auto bed leveling sensor and you're using our firmware, I definitely recommend going and using our Easy ABL starting code. Even if you have a BL Touch, the Easy ABL starting code will work for it. So, and that starting code will go ahead and, what's it called? It'll go ahead and home your printer. It'll, you know, do a touch off. It'll home all, it'll home Z, and then it'll take the mesh, and then it'll do a purge line. So the starting code also includes a purge line, which is my favorite type of purge line, where it just does a little push out on the left side of the bed. And it gets, like, the way it does it, it actually usually grabs most of the crap off the nozzle too. So, all right. Enrique Hernandez, will the new firmware be able to work on the some new S9 Plus? I haven't even unboxed our S8 Plus. Let me look up the S9 Plus. The S9 Plus looks to have a touchscreen in it, so we don't have any firmware out for that printer, so I'm going to assume probably not. It looks like it has a D-Win screen, so it looks like it has a Creality style screen. So, given the fact that you're the first person to ever ask about it, I probably won't be purchasing that machine anytime soon to do any development on. But if you were to change the screen and LCD out, you could definitely run our firmware if you were able to retrofit our EasyBoard V2 in there with a Creality LCD screen. That's possible, but I'm not going to go spend money on a printer that I haven't I haven't got a lot of requests for. Like, that's what we have to do. Unfortunately, we are a business, and spending, hundreds and hundreds of dollars on printers that maybe 2 people buy parts for, it's not worth our time to do anything with. So we got to focus on the most popular ones. Donna Versetto says, for the Marlin input shaping, does a test print work for all speeds, or do I do a separate print for each speed? So you want to do the input shaping test at the fastest speed your printer will do. So I would personally recommend, and when we write the guide, I would recommend doing probably about 150 would be a good spot. I probably wouldn't actually ever print at 200 millimeters a second, because I want a good balance. Even with the input shaping, it is going to make the print quality a lot better, but I feel like input shaping at 150 millimeters a second is going to be kind of a sweet spot between quality and speed. Because even with compensation, whether you're running Clipper input shaping or Marlin input shaping, you're always going to have trade-offs of speed versus quality. The other thing too is, depending on your printer's hot end setup, your extruder setup, whether it's Bowden or direct drive, whether you're using stock PTFE or you're using a nicer quality PTFE like our Tough Tube that's got nicer tolerances on the inside, you're always going to have limitations that are physical. You have to be reasonable about what you're doing. Like the Ender 7, you can see here, even at the 200 here, it was starting to under extrude in some parts. So I'd probably stick around 150 millimeters a second, but that was a stock hot end, stock extruder in the PTFE setup, which that's pretty respectable that I was actually able to get a test print out, and it wasn't just completely garbage. So yeah, there's always a trade-off, and like every printer is going to be different. I could probably recommend baseline settings for most printers because we have them, but my printer is going to be adjusted differently than your printer. My belt tension is going to be different. My wheel tension is going to be different. If you've changed your hot end setup, the weight's going to be different. So that's why this is going to be one of those things where you, where you are going to have to tune it for your printer. So, all right. JCC says, is Easy ABL's here tomorrow? Okay, well, get rid of the BL Touch, and if you still have issues, you have tech support on the board and the ABL sensor. So if you need help with the Easy ABL, and in conjunction with the Easy Board, just send our support a message, and unlike the BL Touch, we will actually give you guys tech support. So, all right. Let's see. Clag's asking, can I provide any tips for printing at 200 millimeters a second? I can give you a general guidelines of what you're going to need to do to actually achieve those speeds, because the other thing is, I can tell my slicer to print at 1,000 millimeters a second. The printer's not going to do it. It's not. I could put 1,000 millimeter a second print, meaning I slice it at that, and the slicer's going to tell it to go that fast. It will never hit those speeds. And the reason it will never hit those speeds is because you have other settings in your printer's firmware, and this is also where getting rid of your touchscreen if you have a printer with a touchscreen comes in, because they typically do not give you options to change these settings, and those settings are your acceleration and your jerk, and sometimes even your max velocity. So typically in the firmwares, the max velocities are set pretty high. That's how many millimeters a second an axis can theoretically move. Typically those are set pretty high. But your acceleration is how quickly an axis can start accelerating and decelerate. And then your jerk is how quickly the printer can change direction. So let's say you have your acceleration on a printer that can print fast, but it's only set to 500, okay? It's not going to achieve any high speeds because the acceleration value is set too low. So if the acceleration value is set too low, you can tell it to go as fast as you want, but the firmware is going to be doing calculations to determine the ramp up and ramp down speeds. And if those are set very conservatively, like a very low value, like 500, it's not going to achieve those high speeds because it's going to be taking into consideration the acceleration value, which determines how fast it ramps up and ramps down when it's doing a move. Now, one thing you will have to do, and I do when I'm playing around with high speed printing and dialing in, is cranking up the accelerations and jerk. And usually what I'll do is I'll start putting them up, jump up by 1,000 at a time, and then run a test print and see if I'm losing steps. Because the other thing too is at a certain point, your printer physically is not going to be able to change direction quickly. It's not going to be able to accelerate or decelerate quickly. And this is also another thing where you must make sure that your printer is physically dialed in, meaning all your rods are lubricated, your bearings are all good, your belts are tensioned correctly, because when you're really pushing machines physically, you're going to get more issues if your printer is not mechanically built right. The other thing too is as the printer is used more and more at these higher speeds, it's going to wear out quicker. You know, just like you drive your car more, you're going to have to do more maintenance on it. You drive your car less, you're going to have to do less maintenance on it. It's the same thing with the printer. A printer is a machine. It has to be treated like that. It needs maintenance. So, you know, you're going to want to uncap and increase your acceleration values. There's multiple values in Marlin. You have your max acceleration, which is this is the maximum it'll ever do, and then your default acceleration, which is where it starts out at. So, and basically, I will usually set, let's say my max acceleration is set to 5,000. I will usually set my you know, default acceleration to like 3,500, so a little bit lower, but we still have a little bit more headroom to go up higher in acceleration. Like, let's say if I turn the feed rate up, or I'm printing a really fast part. The other thing too, and this is very used by Slicer, is even if you set your slicer to insane speeds, it might not actually do those speeds on different moves, whether it's doing infill, whether it's doing inner walls or outer walls or bridging. There's other settings that come into play, because most slicers will run different speeds for different types of moves, whether that's a travel move or whether it's extruding. So there's a lot involved with this. But let's say you have your slicer all set up correctly to actually tell the machine to go fast. It's not going to go fast if your accelerations and your jerk settings are very low, which most of them are on the printers, which is how they should be. Where once you guys start doing the high-speed printing stuff, it's up to you to learn your machine, learn where its limits are, and figure out what those values are. Don't be going on Reddit and asking people what to set it. Just start changing things, take notes, be like, okay, I set my X and Y to 3,500. Oh, I'm losing steps and my printer sounds like it wants to die. Probably a little too fast. The other thing too is once you start doing that, maybe you're also then going to need to adjust what's called the VREF on your stepper drivers. So if you have too low a VREF, and VREF determines how much current the motor gets, you might have to go in and physically adjust little teeny tiny screws on the, you know, little potentiometer screw with screw heads on them, on your control board while the power's on with a multimeter, to give the motor more amperage so it can actually have more torque to hold position and not lose steps while it's doing the high-speed moves. If you're lucky enough to have one of our easy boards, you can do that all digitally with inside the firmware from the LCD screen. You don't have to bust out a, you know, screwdriver and a multimeter. But the reality is most people with the stock boards, you're going to have to physically adjust the current. And a lot of the times the current is set lower on the printers from the factory by default, which is fine at the default speeds. But once you start tuning all this stuff and messing with it, you're probably going to want to bump it up. And then once you bump it up, you're also going to want to have to keep an eye on your motor temperature, because if your motors are getting 70, 80, 90 degrees Celsius, well, even though it's doing the moves, it's going to shorten the lifespan of the motor because they're running so hot. So you got to find a balance between how much current you're putting to the motor so you don't burn them out or overheat them. You got to find a good balance of what your max acceleration and jerk setting is going to be for your printer, and then also find out where the speed settings are on in your slicer that are going to give you the best result after you've sorted out all the printer side stuff, on top of also keeping all the maintenance. So it's a lot. So when people go, I just want to print fast, it's an involved process. Like printing at 60 to 80 millimeters a second, which is usually what we do, it's easy. Just make sure your printer is roughly in decent shape, run the stock firmware even, and you'll get decent prints. So it's a lot. It's not going to be an easy thing, tuning it. But, you know, if that's something you want to do, there's a good starting point. Just hit, I think, basically all the points and stuff that you should be looking at when you're starting to tune for higher speed. So, all right, someone make a cliff notes of that. I know I was all over the place. But anyway, so Ron Bray says, if I want to change a direct drive at Ender 6, is there a specific error in your firmware that I need to change telling it's now a direct drive? No. But what you do need to do is you need to tell you might need to tell the printer that you have a different thermistor, or you might need to run a PID tune on the hot end, or you might need to change your E-steps, or you might need to change or change your motor direction, which our firmware has all those settings provided. So if you're using our firmware, you can use a different thermistor type. You just tell it what number it is. How do you know what number it is? Look at the manufacturer's page that you bought it from. If you bought one from us, we tell you what they are. Other sellers, you know, if you're buying from Amazon or eBay or buying from AliExpress, most of them don't tell you. So good luck with that. But if you're changing out also your extruder, you should find out from the manufacturer how many E-steps you have. So steps per millimeter for that extruder. And most of them will provide you a value at, if you're using a 1/16 step-in driver, that's what most printers are set to. You can also calibrate it yourself if they don't give it to you. But we have all those settings to facilitate those changes for doing basically an upgrade. That's one of the things we designed with the firmware, is making it so that if you need to change something, it's there. So the goal, you know, our Unified 2 firmware, like, yes, you tell it what printer you have, and we configure everything for the stock printer. But if you want to start getting into modifications, whether it's changing a hot end out, changing an extruder out, you need to change motor directions around for your extruder, set different E-steps. That is all in there. It's one of the main reasons that people use our firmware a lot, is because it makes all that easy. All right. So Leicester is asking about the H32 is junk. Yeah, the H32 processor, in my opinion, just because of the lack of support in Platform IO and Marlin, and the fact that the company doesn't have any support, like it's a Chinese chip, I would not run the H32 processors. Like if I got a printer with that, I'd be switching the board out, or honestly, I'd probably just not buy it in the first place. So, but VoxLab has used like 5 different processors in there. There was, I don't even know what our Aquila X2 had in it, because I decided we had so little interest in it with people asking us. I got an itch. That I ended up just giving it away to Krista's nephew for Christmas, and he's been playing with it. He's just going to use it stock. I figure if he needs to upgrade it later, we could always change the board out, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it if he gets that deep into the woods with it. So, all right. Whew. I need to get a drink. I've been talking a lot. All right. So Telmo Fatella says, I've got a Corelli Ender 3S1. Within 1 month, the bed is already very warped. Does a glass resolve it for good? If so, is it bad if I glue a magnet to use a PEI plate on top? So I do not recommend putting magnets on top of glass, but if you're going to bond the glass to the top of the bed, that would be the ideal solution if you really must do that. That printer does have an auto bed leveling sensor, and I have a lot of printers. I have built a lot of printers. I own a lot of printers, and most of my printers do not have flat beds. I have not had a printer yet that has had a bed so warped that even an auto bed leveling system can't sort it out, whether it's a BL Touch or using our Easy ABL. So if it's really that badly warped, and you said within a month, contact Creality, because they claim there's a 1-year warranty on it. If they don't give you a new bed and your bed really is that warped, then open a chargeback with your credit card company after you've gone through them and you have documented evidence that they're basically telling you to piss off. That bed's not hard to change out. If it's really that warped, I would highly recommend getting a replacement. I would be pissed, especially given how expensive that printer was. Now, don't get me wrong. Physically, that printer is a nice printer. I like my S1. I think it was expensive. But for the price you're paying for those, you should not have a very warped bed. If you do, they should be warranting that. If they don't, then like I said, open up a chargeback. Hang on, I need to grab like a bottle of water or something, and I'm going to put some more on it because I need more caffeine. We're on a roll. We might go a little bit later today. I need you guys to ask more questions. So, Tielmo says the auto level doesn't compensate. So, either that could be... now, here's the thing. I know some people reported that the Ender 3 S1 stock firmware did not work in terms of auto leveling. So, if you have the S1, you can go in right now and download our firmware for free for that printer and flash it. I would update that, update the LCD, and update the printer board and see if the auto leveling works. The other thing is, in order for auto leveling to work, you also have to make sure that you have proper starting G code. For that printer, if you have our firmware installed, you can just go to our website, type in EasyABL starting G code into the help center, and use the starting G code from the EasyABL with your CR Touch that comes with it. The CR Touch isn't a great probe, but it's better than nothing. I just spilled some maw. Friggin' Nemo reminded me about the maw because I had found a monster in my fridge downstairs and I'm like, that sounds delicious. And I still have my maw here. Buy maw! They're an affiliate of ours. I blame Tor for getting me hooked on it, but it's nice because literally you just throw a scoop in a water bottle or whatever, and then you got an energy drink. It's like... I don't know, it's like Kool-Aid, but there's no sugar in it. Also, if you have a SodaStream and you guys get this stuff, carbonate it. Supposedly it's amazing. I don't have a SodaStream, but Tor has one. Yeah, Tor has one, and one of our other customers gave us that idea. Anyways, back onto the printer questions. Now I got my drink here. All right. So let me go ahead and clear out these questions here. Nemo says, is there a new giveaway form? No, it should just be giveaway.th3dstudio.com. It should be active. Yeah, it's active. I'm looking at it right now. Giveaway.th3dstudio.com. It should have a fancy moving background. Krista got fancy with Microsoft Forms. The other Tim's here. Mr. DeWitt, keep the beard. I think, okay, what are your guys' opinion? Do you guys think that like the shorter one looks good or the longer one? Because I feel like when it gets longer, I look like a Amish. Like, I feel like I should be going out and plowing the fields and my name be Jebediah. It gets really gingery. All right. Oh, it looks like Emerson, a.k.a. Backyard Tinkerer. It's his birthday today. I'm assuming that's either one of his friends or his wife. What are we doing on his birthday? Working on printers? All right. All right. The short one, be a man, go full beard. How many of you guys that had longer beards, how many of you guys have got it stuck in like moving parts on your printer? Because on the printers where the roller is up front for the Y, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten caught in the freaking rollers. And dear God, does that hurt. Oh, man. Everybody say happy birthday to Backwood Tinkerer, with a.k.a. Emerson. He's one of my good friends, and a guy that I've become friends with. He was a customer of ours, and we shoot the shit quite regularly. He's a good dude. He also has like basically his own little zoo there. All right, let's see. Gfish says, I've been getting thermal runaway errors from Octoprint. My printer seems to be fine. Is there a plugin that's causing this error? So I'm not aware of a plugin that causes that error, but it is possible you could have a poorly written plugin. The easiest way would be to just disconnect from Octoprint and run a print off the SD card as a test. And that way you can rule that out. But in general, if your printer is throwing a thermal runaway error and it says on the printer's LCD that it was a thermal runaway error, there's probably an issue, and it may not be immediately clear, and it may not be where the point where the issue is so bad that you're going to see damage. There typically is a problem if you're getting thermal runaway errors. Now, the one thing is, if you've updated your firmware and you've changed your hot end or your cooling setup, it could be that and I'm assuming this is a thermal runaway on your hot end and not your bed, is that you might need to run a PID tune. So if you go to our help center, and anytime I say help center, I'm talking about our support site. So it's support.th3dstudio.com. And that'll take you right to what we call our help center. I feel like I should set up a redirect from helpcenter.th3dstudio.com to support. What do you guys think? Should I set up that redirect? I would just tell you people to go to support because that's what it's hosted on. So anyways, yeah, do not ignore it. There's a reason. It doesn't just decide, hey, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to make this guy's life hell by just throwing random thermal runaway errors. It's doing it for a reason. Don't ignore it, because I can tell you that, and this is coming from someone who was like, why is this triggering? I don't see anything wrong. I don't see anything wrong. Well, there ended up being a break in one of my wires for the thermistor, and it was causing an intermittent connection. So, you know, if you've already ran a PID tune on the hot end, I've even had stock printers where running a PID tune makes things better. I would definitely try running that if it's on the hot end. If it's on the bed, you probably have some like failing wire connection or like a break somewhere. That's been my experience, where it's been like, I can't find the problem, but there's like an internal break somewhere on the wire for the bed. But typically most thermal runaways you see it happen on the hot ends. I rarely see thermal runaways on the beds. It's typically with the hot ends. But again, you can have it on both, but don't ignore it. The good thing to do, like let's say you can't track it down, you look at it, like everything looks fine, you're looking at the hot end, you're checking your wire connections to the board, and it's still not working. Well, what I'll usually do, I'll take my multimeter, okay? I'll take my multimeter, I'll put it in resistance mode. So where is it? I'll put it in resistance mode, okay? And then I will take the two leads and I will, you know, find a way to attach these so I'm not having to hold them. I'll find a way to attach the wires to the probe leads for the thermistor that goes to the hot end. So unplug it from the board. You know, maybe I'll shove a little wire into the end of the plug for the thermistor and make it go to the leads. And I'll look at the resistance, okay? I'll let it sit there for a sec. And then while I'm looking at the screen on the multimeter, I will move the wires around. And if I see the resistance changing on my LCD while I'm moving the wires around, that tells me there's a break somewhere. And I'll do the same thing with the heater cartridge, because either one of those could cause a problem. If you have an intermittent connection or a connection that's failing, maybe it hasn't completely failed, and it's just kind of making connection, and you know, if it moves to a certain point on the bed, then it loses connection for a split second, that could cause it. If any of you guys are watching right now and you do not own a multimeter, go buy one right now. And while you're at it, also buy yourself a cheap soldering iron. If you have a 3D printer, you should own a multimeter, and you should own a soldering iron and some rosin core solder. Rosin core solder is the one that has the flux on the inside. Those two tools can be bought for less than $50 for both. You don't need, like, this is a really nice $200 EEV blog multimeter because I'm bougie like that. I actually just like how quickly the update rate is. But if you do not own a multimeter, even the $20 one from Home Depot or Menards or Lowe's or whatever, if you got Menards, go to Menards. I'm a Menards whore. Love Menards. Go buy one, okay? Because what this will do, you can test your voltages, you can test your VREFs, you can test resistances on your heaters and your thermistors. If you don't own a multimeter and a soldering iron, go get one right now, because those two tools, along with a basic tool set, will allow you to troubleshoot most of the problems on your machine. And by not having them, you're just kind of like, well, I don't know what to do. Get a multimeter and get a soldering iron. So it's not that expensive. And you can use it for other stuff. I feel like many people these days, even people in the maker community, they don't have what I consider, and I think are basic tools. I think a multimeter is a basic tool. I think a soldering iron is a basic tool. You should own them. All right. So Talmo's got more details on his S3. So he's saying the auto level doesn't compensate well because what happens is some parts make a good level, the others squish the line of the nozzle. Okay, so if you're having it, and this is in general with any ABL sensor, BL Touch, Easy ABL, CR Touch, if you are printing, and let's say your left side of the bed is higher than the right, or the right is higher than the left, either way, it's like a slant. That's your gantry not being level. So on the Ender 3S1, it actually has a belt at the top that links the two axes together. And what you should do is you loosen up the grub screws on one of the pulleys that the closed loop belt is connected to, and that will allow that one lead screw to spin in the actual nut that the pulley, or in the pulley that the closed loop belt rides on. And what you can do then is level the printer's gantry with the frame. And these, I think, are in our STL pack. These are gantry leveling blocks, okay? You can use anything that is just two things that are the same height, okay? But I have these. These are literally in my drawer in my tools, okay? These are exactly the same height, and what you can do is you can put the bottom part onto the printer's frame and rest this on the bottom of the gantry and then lower it down. So on the Ender 3S1, you would loosen up the grub screws on one side. Doesn't matter which side. One side, so the closed loop belt isn't holding them exactly the same. Then you bring the gantry down and set it on here so they're touching the top on both sides. And once you have it leveled, you then retighten those grub screws and it will hold it in place. So if you're getting an uneven result where it's higher on the left, higher on one side than the other, and it's like almost like it's a slant, it's your gantry. Because you got to remember, these sensors level your bed. They do not level your gantry. So if your gantry is not level with the printer's frame, it's going to screw with the results. So definitely something to keep in mind when you're troubleshooting auto bed leveling issues. And this for any probe, for the CR Touch, the Easy ABL, BL Touch, whatever. Any auto bed leveling probe that attaches to your hot end, which is all of them, you got to make sure your printer's gantry is level. It has to be. And if you have a printer where you don't have dual lead screws, like on the Ender 3s, then you're going to have to rebuild the gantry, loosen some screws up, and kind of get it as close as possible as you can. So there you go. Because if you think about it, on the printers that have independently controlled Z motors, like on the Anycubic Chiron is the one printer I own that actually has independently controlled Z motors, it levels to the end stops. It doesn't level to the bed. It levels the gantry to the end stops. So basically the same thing could happen there, whereas if one end stop was higher than the other, then it's going to screw up your auto bed level. So it's the same idea. It's an auto bed leveling sensor. It's not a gantry leveling sensor. So, all right. And we are just past the 5 o'clock mark. So I think 3D experiments would be the last question here. And he says, I had to replace my Ender 6's board. What's a good current to run the stock XY motors at? I'm assuming you mean the VRF because you're measuring it. Those are the TMC 2208s, if memory serves correct. And I would probably follow the 422 reference, the reference information we have, which is on the support site. I'm going to head over there right now. Let's see. Let me switch to my screen share here. So VREF, so here we go. I would probably do these because I'm assuming, because here's the thing, the Ender 6 board is basically a 422 board. It's just reworked a little bit. So I would probably set it to like 1.2 volts. They're different because it's like for an Ender 3. So obviously the Y, X and Y are different. Why they have the X set higher than the Y, I don't know. This is what Creality provided us with. So, or actually, I think I got this from Tiny Machines. I would probably just set it to 1.2 volts, and if the motors are not burning hot, leave it there. So, that's what I would do. I would adjust your X and Y. Even though this video is older, everything in this video still applies. Your board just is going to look slightly different. So, this goes over adjusting your PSU voltage, and this is why I recommend you have a multimeter, because you actually have to take readings off the top of the little potentiometers. And you see here, I'm using a cheap as shit multimeter. These are like cheap little $10 multimeters we used to carry. And for some reason, people thought $10 was too expensive for a multimeter. Well, good luck finding them that cheap now. But I digress. Basically, you have to measure on these little points here. And I show it closer here. So if you look here, these little potentiometers, this is what you're adjusting. So you adjust this, and you can see here, and I missed a screwdriver. We used to also sell ceramic screwdrivers. So if you slip, it doesn't short everything out. Why people didn't like them beats me. But anyways, even on the newer 32-bit boards, you can see this is an older 8-bit board. It's the same procedure. You're still going to adjust these little potentiometers. So basically, you give it a tiny turn. We're talking just a hair, and then you take your reading. And basically, the video explains everything, so I'm not going to go re-explaining it, but this is what I mean by manually adjusting your VREFs. If you have an easy board in your printer, you can just go to the LCD and tell it you want more current on the X. If you have one of these cheaper boards, like the stock Creality boards, you know, and many other companies, it's not just Creality, you physically have to adjust a potentiometer on the board to do it while the power is on. So if you have metal screwdriver, which I've done it with metal screwdrivers before, I haven't shorted anything out because I'm very careful, but you have to do it with the power on. So it can be kind of nerve-wracking if it's your first time. Just take your time. Take your time and go slow. The other thing I've done to actually make it a little easier is I will actually, if I'm using a metal screwdriver, I will actually just take the positive lead of my multimeter and touch it to the screwdriver as I'm adjusting it, so the voltage runs up the screwdriver and it gives me an accurate enough reading to adjust it, and I can see in real time then. But I've been doing this a while. I wouldn't recommend that if it's your first time manually adjusting VREFs, but watch that video. It's on that VREF port. So if you just go to our website and search, or go to our help center, which you can get through our website, just go to help center. That's on the recommended VREF page for the Creality 42X TMC boards. That video is there. If you just go on YouTube, search TH3D VREF, that video will also come up. But all right, we're at 5:06, and I'm a bad dog dad because I don't have any snacks for Remo. You know what? We're going to go get him a snack. I'll be right back because he has been a good boy. And I'll go get the dummy. I'll go get the tiny little drone eater. What? We got snackies! Snackies! Do you guys want snackies? Yes, you do. We're going to leave this out here. Oh, look at. Get down. Get down. Sit. Sit. Speak. Woof. Yep. Come on, sit. Sit. Shake. Sit. Sit. Shake. Close enough. No, you gotta sit. Good boy. Rainbow, shake. Good boy. All right, there we go. And we're gonna keep this out here. So we have the snackies for the dogs when we wrap up a stream. And here, I will show you our tiny terrorist, who is not so tiny anymore. Look how big we are. Here. Woo! We're getting big. Yes, we are. What? Oh! There we go. All right. All right, then we'll wrap up this stream. Sorry if I just yelled. But I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys enjoyed this stream. We do these every Wednesday at 4 p.m. And that's 4 p.m. Central Time. Tomorrow we will be having the Sova SV06 stream, so make sure to check that out, and that'll be at 2 p.m. Central. If you guys want to get an email 30 minutes before we go live whenever we do a stream, join our YouTube notification email list at the bottom. That's all that list is used for, is sending out YouTube video notifications, so you don't have to worry about YouTube trying to not send you notifications. So... all right, I have talked a lot. I'm out of breath. But I hope you guys learned something. And with that, I hope you guys are having a great 2023. And as always, happy printing. I will see you guys on the next stream, which is Friday at 2 p.m. Central. See you there.